Russia's war machine is running out of steam. Fuel is running out, systems are strained, and the picture is changing. The skies over Volgograd were lit up by flames throughout the night. The images of the fires can no longer be hidden. The flow on the Druzhba pipeline was suddenly cut off, and the reaction is growing rapidly. The key railway junction in Voronezh has come to a standstill, and delays are spreading across the entire network. The refinery in Rostov has been hit again, and the defense lines have been breached once more. These are not isolated incidents, they are links in a single chain. The chain's targets are the arteries that feed fuel, transportation, and the budget. And with each blow to the arteries, every vehicle heading to the front slows down a little more. As vehicles slow down, plans slow down, and the risk grows. Today's picture is clear. Moscow's reserves are dwindling faster than expected. How long can the Kremlin hold out at this pace? The Lukoil refinery in Volgograd was targeted by unmanned aerial vehicles on the night of August 19th. Governor Andrei Bokarov was forced to confirm the fire and multiple drone attacks. Local sources reported successive explosions and low-altitude flights. At the same time, a fire broke out on the roof of a hospital, widening the scope of the incident. Official statements focused on the number of drones shot down, but the flames remained. By the end of the night, there was an uncontrolled fire at the refinery site. The news flow continued until morning, and the images could not be concealed. This scale, depth, and duration showed that this was no ordinary incident. The phrase, "the fuel heart of the South," gained new meaning that night. The Volgograd attack placed fuel infrastructure at the center of the campaign. Volgograd was not just a single day's news and became a recurring target. The same facility had been struck days earlier, temporarily halting production. The Saratov refinery had recently ceased operations and the outage prolonged. Ryazan was forced to shut down part of its capacity. Production in Novokuibyshevsk came to a complete halt, and the impact was felt. These blows, coming in quick succession, disrupted the rhythm of spare parts and maintenance. The disrupted rhythm manifested itself in the market as price and supply pressure. The Ukrainian side systematically focused its targets on oil facilities. This choice indirectly affects every tracked vehicle on the front lines. Because when the fuel supply chain breaks down, the front line also grinds to a halt. The Rosneft Syzran refinery in Samara halted production after the August 15th attack. AVT sustained damage to its primary unit, rendering a significant portion of its capacity offline. Sources estimated repairs would extend until the end of the month, pushing back the timeline. AVT Syzran was discussed for a restart attempt, but the scale remained limited. Syzran is an annual facility with a capacity of approximately 8.5 million tons, and its impact is regional. This outage was highlighted under the headline, "The Shutdown of the Fourth Largest Refinery." The full shutdowns of Novokuibyshevsk and Saratov further complicated the picture. Ryazan's capacity reduction put pressure on the Moscow region. In the south, unexpected outages at Volgograd exacerbated the shock. Total closed capacity and cuts reached double digits within 2 weeks. The Novoshakhtinsk refinery in the Rostov region caught fire again, and images were widely shared. At least 5 explosions were reported, and the fire intensified. The facility, which primarily produced fuel oils and diesel, was a regional hub. Intelligence channels reported that Panzer and Tor systems were deployed on the ground. However, on-site results indicated that the layers had been penetrated. Compared to previous attacks, the reaction time was also longer. The fire spread rapidly across the site, and firefighting teams appeared to be delayed.
It's still burning there, blazing away.
The fact that this facility has once again been targeted highlights a weak point in the defense. As this weak point is exploited repeatedly, repair budgets increase and morale declines. In addition to fuel lines, insurance and risk costs are also rising. The strategic impact of these attacks lies in the equation refinery equals war fuel. In peacetime, the refinery industry is a mundane cog in the machine and does not make headlines. In war, the refinery is a weapon and as valuable as ammunition. Without diesel, artillery cannot fire, tanks cannot move, and trucks lose range. When jet fuel runs low, sorties decrease and the sky becomes sparse. When heating and generator fuel is hit, rear areas also become vulnerable. That is why target selection is not just a list of facilities. The rhythm of the rear is written alongside this list. When the rhythm is disrupted, operational windows narrow and decisions are delayed. A delayed decision multiplies the value of even the smallest UAV on the ground. The strike on the Druzhba pipeline's Nikolskoye 1 pumping station had repercussions all the way to Europe. Flow toward Hungary and Slovakia was completely cut off for a day. Budapest interpreted this as an energy security attack and responded accordingly. The operator on the Slovak side also confirmed the flow interruption. Shortly thereafter, the flow resumed, but fragility was exposed. This is because the same pipeline had experienced issues days earlier at a distribution center in Bryansk. Ukraine clearly conveyed the message that the target is the Russian economy and war logistics. This message also served as a call for a Plan B to European refineries. Tensions escalated into energy diplomacy and rhetoric hardened. A pump station heated up the continent's politics in a single day. The attack on the Liski station in Voronezh severed the lifeline of the railway network. Russian sources acknowledged explosions and low-altitude flights throughout the night. Damage to the power plant forced many trains to halt. Some passenger and freight trains on the route were unable to move for hours. Some reports put the number of delays in the double digits, straining the network. Liski is one of the administrative and technical hubs of the Southeastern Railway. Any disruption here immediately spreads across the entire southern network. Ukrainian sources noted that this station plays a key role in military supply. A single disruption in the network can sever the chain of ammunition and fuel supplies. And when the chain is broken, switching to trucks increases risks and costs. Convoys take priority on tracks under strain, but this is also unsafe. Vehicles are slower and more visible targets. In long-range drone surveillance, the chance for camouflage decreases. Daytime transportation risks multiply, and nighttime windows narrow. Coal, ammunition, and fuel require separate planning. Separate plans extend decision-making time on the ground and increase the margin for error. Every delay reduces the firepower of a unit. Decreased intensity leaves defense lines vulnerable. Vulnerable lines encourage the enemy to maneuver. Encouraged maneuvers redirect the tracks back to the target. The domestic market began to experience a shockwave in petroleum products, and numbers remained high. Wholesale gasoline prices hit record highs on the stock market. AI 92 and AI 95 quotations exceeded 2% in a single day. The cumulative increase since the beginning of the year exceeded double digits, and pressure grew. Reports of shortages emerged in some regions and queues were discussed. Experts reported that capacity losses were nearing double digits. The government temporarily halted gasoline exports to protect domestic supply. The price surge did not abate, and stockpiles depleted rapidly. Claims of coupon-based sales circulated in remote areas. The market was summarized by the phrase, "Fuel is available, but access is difficult." Supply shortages became evident in Russia's Far East, and price records were broken. AI 92 and AI 95 contracts rose sharply within a single day. Logistics companies issued warnings as intercity transportation costs increased. While provincial governments claimed the situation was under control, stock market data told a different story. The increase at the pump was a delayed reflection of the surge in the wholesale market. In some areas, refinery shipment schedules were delayed and distribution was disrupted. These disruptions also spread to the agriculture and construction sectors. Heavy machinery with high fuel consumption was forced to operate outside of scheduled plans. Truck cooperatives discussed alternative routes and fuel sharing. Measures taken at the top remained slow and limited in the field. The Ukrainian General Staff shared a total damage estimate for infrastructure operations in 2025. According to the estimate, the damage reached $74.1 billion. Approximately 80% of this was directly related to oil and gas facilities. This figure paints a picture beyond individual images of fires. The picture points to a strategy of depriving the war economy of fuel. The target list includes not only refineries, but also storage and pumping facilities. Railway hubs are being added to this list, amplifying the impact. The combined pressure is increasing repair and insurance costs behind the front lines. As costs rise, stocks deplete faster. and as stocks deplete, the pace of war inevitably slows. Official rhetoric clings to the phrase many drones were shot down, but fires, outages and delays remain at the end of the day. Governors' confirmations and on-the-ground footage tell a story beyond the numbers. It is impossible to say no impact while a hospital roof is burning. The narrative of only rubble is no longer credible while refinery chimneys are ablaze. This is why a gap is emerging between the language of communication and the reality on the ground. As the gap widens, the market's reaction hardens and prices spike. As prices spike, the political cost rises and the center begins to seek solutions. The first stop in this search is an export break and a shift toward the domestic market. However, if capacity issues persist, supply shortages continue despite the break. As maintenance cycles become more challenging, downtime increases and schedules slip. Firefighters and industrial safety teams are forced to work more intensively. Access to spare parts and specialized teams is becoming more difficult due to sanctions and flight restrictions. Patching the domestic market with low-standard parts reduces safety. As patching increases, the risk of unexpected downtime grows and costs multiply. This cycle turns planned shutdowns into unplanned breakdowns. Unplanned breakdowns increase safety stress and inflate insurance premiums. As premiums rise, management cuts other expenses. These cuts further slow down repair speeds. Thus, a vicious maintenance cost spiral forms. Ukraine's approach is to create a cost asymmetry by using cheap and numerous UAVs instead of expensive missiles. A single FPV or surveillance strike package can lock down multi-million-dollar facilities for hours. Frequent, soft strikes are preferred over heavy-range strikes. This preference increases the fatigue of the defense and creates vulnerabilities. Once a vulnerability is found, the same facility can become a target again within days. The repair team is already on the way when the alarms start sounding. In this cycle, defense must be perfect. Perfection is impossible on the ground, and the element of chance is high. This element of chance allows the aggressor to achieve a good enough standard. And good enough slows down the war economy sufficiently. The slowdown in train traffic on the southern routes is also putting pressure on logistics heading toward Crimea. When nodes like Liski malfunction, north-south flows are cut off. Crimean land corridor stations become more vulnerable. Surveillance intensifies around bridges and viaducts. As road convoys increase, fuel consumption and risk rise simultaneously. Units allocated for convoy security are withdrawn from the front lines. The gap at the front reduces fire pressure and thins the lines. Thinner lines open a window of opportunity for small units. These windows can translate into operational level gains in depth. This chain demonstrates that a single station can be strategic. The European energy map has been forced into daily mode by these attacks. Hungary made harsh statements and declared the disruption a matter of national security. The Slovak side confirmed this but did not disclose technical details. Even if the flow resumes the next day, the fragility has been documented. Every node of Druzhba is now being monitored with a risk-present note. This monitoring is also forcing refineries and terminals to adjust their plans. Discussions on a supply basket have gained momentum within the EU. Some capitals are discussing emergency stock releases and alternative flow plans. Even a short-term disruption has affected price psychology. Psychology, the market, and politics are now exerting pressure simultaneously. Moscow is trying to increase repair speeds, but the window of opportunity on the ground is narrow. The repetitive nature of drone attacks creates new risks before repairs can be completed. Deploying additional systems for the defense layer is also not straightforward. Personnel and spare part constraints prevent the establishment of a lasting advantage. Relocating production lines is not a viable option for a fundamental solution. Even if they were relocated, the pipelines and storage networks would remain in place. Maintaining what remains requires round-the-clock surveillance and expenses. As expenses rise, cuts in other areas deepen. As cuts deepen, public reaction grows and social pressure mounts. This pressure makes the fragility of the economy more visible. On the budget side, energy revenues remain the backbone, and this backbone is taking a hit. Export taxes and tax revenues from domestic consumption are under pressure. Price increases in the domestic market are beginning to curb demand. As demand declines, it becomes even more difficult for refineries to operate efficiently. Foreign exchange revenues are limited by sanctions, price caps, and freight costs. Now, physical capacity losses have been added to these constraints. As losses grow, there is a growing tendency to dip into reserves. Reserve use provides short-term relief but leads to long-term dependency. As dependency increases, external shocks become more dangerous. As the danger grows, the room for political maneuvering shrinks. In the shadow of the images of fires on the ground, the public mood hardens. Long lines and no fuel signs disrupt the rhythm of daily life. Harvests in rural areas, deliveries in cities, and public services are disrupted. Critical services such as ambulances and fire trucks require separate plans. Separate plans fuel disputes over resource sharing. The growing conflict increases local tensions and multiplies complaints. As complaints mount, the central government seeks quick solutions. Quick solutions are either imports or restrictions. Imports are politically costly, while restrictions carry social risks. In both cases, the cost remains on the central government's table. Ukraine's pressure on fuel trains and depots has turned railway tracks into a war zone. The tracks no longer carry only cargo, they now carry targets and messages. The burning of a fuel train is not merely a loss of stock. Range plans, unit routes, and airspace schedules also change. A single night's fire disrupts a week's supply schedule. A disrupted schedule disrupts ammunition and fuel matching at the front. Disrupted matching reduces fire intensity and weakens defense. Weakened defense invites tactical changes. This invitation grants small units opportunity and speed. Small units that gain speed affect the bigger picture. The coming weeks will be a test for Moscow. Repair and attack. The questions are clear, and studying may not be enough. Because the subject of the lesson is production, logistics, and budget all at once. If all three are good on the same day, the pace is maintained. If one stumbles, the other two are disrupted. Currently, all three are under pressure and time is tight. Drone strikes, rail pressure, and pump station shocks are all happening at the same time. This combination is straining reserves a little more each day. Strained reserves push decision-makers toward quick but expensive solutions. Expensive solutions are not sustainable and the cycle does not close. The final picture can be summed up in a simple, harsh sentence. When fuel lines burn, armies stop, and this rule has not changed. When refineries shut down one after another, the rear lines cannot breathe. When railway hubs become targets, supply chains collapse. When a pump station is hit, the tension in continental politics rises. Stock market figures end the fairy tale, and prices speak the truth. The image of fire is not propaganda alone, it is production loss. Production loss is the very essence of a war economy. And a war economy cannot function without fuel. What we see today is that Moscow's debt for fuel and time is growing rapidly. Thank you for watching.